I'm Kinsey Gravel, and I will be presenting my integrative project. So, to start off, I'm talking about the battle with power in the workplace and why we stereotype women as being incapable of leading. And so, first, to really dive into what we're talking about is to better narrow down the topic. And we can do that by looking at a more specific question. That question is, what is the glass ceiling for women in executive business positions and why are they misguided? So, to better answer this question, we're probably going to need to know a little bit more about what the glass ceiling is. And the definition of the glass ceiling is an unofficial acknowledged barrier to advancement in a profession, especially affecting women and members of minorities. So, a good example of that is going to be the graph to your right. This is the average earnings of full-time year-round workers. This is more of a annual salary look, and you're going to see in the orange is represented women, and then in the blue is men. You can tell there's an obvious difference between the blue and orange bars in these graphs. So this is just averages, but um, at the bottom you can see a variety of different careers that they're having a closer look at. Um, and no matter what the label of the career at the bottom, I think that those bars should be closer in height. So the reason for this subject and why it is important is better said with these points. Women in the workforce went from just over a third of the workforce in 1970 to almost half of the total workforce in 2012. And this information was given by Barsh J. and Yi L. And this transitions to women working full time and year round, earning about 77% to a man's 100%. So not only are the amount of women in the workforce, not only is it growing and the amount is growing, but the pay is not growing with it. And so 77 cents to a man's dollar is still um, maybe progress, but it is not close enough to where it should be because it should be equal. So that leads into inequality in the workplace. This creates unnecessary barriers for success for women. Um, there should not be the pay wage gap, and this creates unnecessary issues for women who are already, doing what they can do and being as qualified as a man is to get the same exact job. So, to take a better look at this subject, I wanted to use a psychologist that I felt was going to best match the subject. And so I chose Karen Horney. Um, so her big advancement that really set her apart from everyone else was not only her progress with the feminist movement, but also her disagreement with Freud. Um, that definitely, well, she wasn't even one of his students, but she was made such a splash in the subject because she disagreed with his idea that men and women were born inherently with inherent differences in their personalities. She completely disagreed with this and believed more it was a societal and cultural explanation. And so her outlook was that men and women were equal outside of the cultural restrictions often placed on females. This is basically just a fancy way of saying stereotypes that are placed on women are the reason that we're having unequal treatment in the workplace. And so both men and women obviously have a drive to be resourceful and be productive, which is really the most important part of everything that she stands for is there is no differences and the treatment should be equal because everyone feels the same way, has the same goals, and has the same aspirations, which is to be productive. So to give a little summary of what the rest of this presentation is going to entail, we are going to look at these points right here, which is I'd like to dissect the ins and outs of women in the workplace. Just give a couple key important points that I think will answer the biggest questions about why there's any struggle at all. And then, of course, there'll be a couple brief analysts of the current statistics. This just means the numbers for what's going on right now. Obviously, the numbers are growing in women in the workplace, so we need to have a better understanding of not only how many women are in the workplace, but what that looks like, the ratio of payments and wage gap, and we'll look at that as we get farther into the presentation. And then also just last to say, female representation in power can change the ingrained stereotype. And as we get farther along into the presentation, we're going to look at some different examples of this. So to get on to the first main point, we're going to ask the question, why does having family responsibilities make women less desirable as a leader? So this is a controversial subject, I think, but what's happening right now currently is women are perceived as having a lack of commitment to the job because of having a family. It's seen as a distraction. And so due to that stereotype of being a distracted leader and being incapable of leading, as those two go hand in hand, they actually have a 7% wage penalty per child to working women who are not mothers. So you are actually, not only are you seen as less desirable, but you actually get punished and are paid 7% less. So that is an unnecessary and definitely not deserved pay cut. So mothers, a 2.5% earning penalty for each child. So again, it sounds strange that we're going per child, but that's how it works. The more children you have, the more distraction they are. It means less time to focus on your job and do your job well, which is never always the case. So the very last point just kind of does the comparison between men and women. Fathers, a 2.1% earning boost for each child. So this comes from Allworth J source, but just to compare what we've looked at here so far on this slide, to say that women are actually taking a pay cut per child, and then fathers are actually earning and getting rewarded for children. I read a lot of different articles that referred to men being praised for having a family because it gave the stereotype is that they were perceived as having something to work for. It was their reason, it was their inspiration, whatever that may be, and that made them more desirable. So it's definitely almost a total opposite side of the spectrum, which is really interesting. So the second point that I wanted to look at is, why do women have a lack of opportunity for connections and business relationships? So 37 women CEOs of the Fortune 500, out of those 37, 93% are led by men. And this comes from Chin JL. So this basically, in short words, is just saying a very small percentage of women are CEOs in a Fortune 500 company. This pool of people in Fortune 500 companies and CEOs, 93% are led by men. You're looking at a huge majority of these people are men, and there's a very small minority of women, which makes it more difficult to make connections with people that have similarities to you because there aren't enough options. There aren't enough of us in the workplace, a CEO and positions like that. So it's going to be hard to make connections with people that are similar to you or have that advantage when everybody else is a male. And then obviously this leads to out of work and sometimes in work conversations, because majority of the time these are men. Women feel left out from decision making in the workplace just due to the fact that the settings are deemed as boy club activities. This just means that it's non-inclusive. Men are usually going to make executive decisions or have business meetings, and whatever those settings may be, a lot of the time it's not going to be inclusive to women, and that makes it difficult for interaction and representation in those kind of big decisions. And then also the perception of women can lead to an uninclusive workplace. So not only are they not being a part of decisions, but this now can bleed into work life and daily life and the things that they're going to be treated differently because they weren't at said boy club activity. They weren't at whatever that decision was. And so due to that lack of interaction and integration, they now are going to see that even more often because it's going to be more and more comfortable as time goes on. So what is the paradox for women in a leadership role? basically you're seeing these two bubbles here of this Venn diagram because you can't be, women in the workplace are told to not be too assertive or they're seen as witchy or cold, but you can't be too easygoing because you're perceived as a pushover. So the challenge is finding the balance between the two. This is not as difficult for a man. Usually men are more likely to be accepted as being disliked or not caring what people think. And when women are usually more concerned with other satisfaction. So the solution, I believe, for all of this is someone has a, all right, someone starts implicating small wins and incremental changes within the company. This just means to display both assertiveness and fairness in women who are leaders. Education and support from men in the workplace is also crucial. You need allies in those positions, and it's going to be difficult unless you have everybody on your side. And this is White, Randall, and Van Velsen. A couple, before I go on to the next slide, a couple examples of those small wins and incremental changes is making accommodations, flexible work arrangements, leveraging gender differences, and giving sensitivity training, which actually could be super helpful. It may sound like above and beyond, but it definitely could be a necessity. In conclusion, we already have made huge advancements in women's rights. This is not to discount anything that's already been done and the immense amount of progress that's been made, but we definitely need to make more progress and do it as fast as possible because every single day, women in the workplace are not being given the opportunity that they deserve. And the glass ceiling can and will be shattered. And that's it. Thank you.